Hello and welcome back to Netlab.local, configuring Active Directory domain services on VMware vSphere. I'm Richard Golson and I'm going to take you through task 1 where we join our vCenter server to the Netlab.local domain. That Netlab.local domain is not the same as the domain we've been using to log on to the server. So we've been using the sysadmin account. And that sysadmin account is part of the vclass.local domain. That is an internal domain that is integral to our vSphere environment and the vCenter server. And so we're going to be connecting to that. After joining the domain, an AD user can then be selected and assigned rights to manage virtual machines. So we can say, we want this individual, the specific user, to be able to manage this particular virtual machine, but not others. And this gives us that granularity in rights. And so we're already logged in here. So let's go ahead and navigate to the correct page here and go ahead and get started. So what we're going to need to do is get down to the administration pane. So I'll go ahead and get to there now. Click on my menu, go to administration. And then if you look down the side here in the navigator, you'll see single sign-on. And what I'm looking for under single sign-on is the configuration node. I'll go ahead and click on that. In the configuration node, I need to make sure that the identity provider tab is selected. And then coming down here, you can see that the identity sources, there is that system domain, the vclass.local. And then there is a local operating system domain. Or identity source, I should say. It's not a domain. Those are the two that are available here. I'm going to come down to the Active Directory domain, select that. And then if you take a look here, we can see that here's this node that we're currently at, and the node didn't join any Active Directory. So we're going to select the Join AD button here. And then I need to put in the information that's required for this server to authenticate to that Active Directory domain. So I'll go ahead and put in the domain name. Now it's important to note that when you're placing this domain in here, you're essentially telling this server to go seek out and find the IP address for the identity source for that domain, the domain controller typically. So it's going to have to do a DNS lookup to get that. And so there'll be a little bit of an exchange back and forth, but it's really important to note that that DNS lookup, that does require that we have set up our vSphere environment with the DNS that can access that information. Next, under the username, we'll go ahead and put in the administrator account. And then we have for password, training with a special character. And we'll go ahead and hit join. Before we do so, do take note that we're going to need to reboot this server to apply the changes. So we'll have to log out of here and go in somewhere else to do that. Let me go ahead and hit the join button. And it tells us that we have joined the Active Directory Netlab.local domain. So that's good news. It also reminds us that we have to do the reboot to apply the changes. Let's go ahead and acknowledge that statement there. And then to restart the vCenter server, we'll open a new tab. And then we'll navigate to the vCenter's special interface on a different port number. In this case, the port number is 5480. So we're going to use this, that default port of 5480. That's used to access the vCenter server appliance web user interface, which is a different one than we've been working with. So the VMware vCenter Server Appliance Management Interface, or VAMI or VAMI, is used to perform these administrative tasks such as changing a host name, network configurations, applying other settings, even restarting the server, which is what we're going to do now. So I'll go ahead and put that in and we'll get into that interface. Okay, so you can see here that we are at the VMware vCenter Server Management interface. So I will need to go ahead and put in my credentials for this. And so when I do so, it's going to be the same credentials we were using earlier. Okay, I entered my credentials. I'll go ahead and hit the login button. Here we are. So I'm on the summary page. This is going to show me overall information for the vCenter server itself. So if you've been wondering, hey, how can I view and manage information about the vCenter server? This is the interface for that. So what I'm going to do is apply a reboot so that way it joins the domain or finishes joining the domain. So I'll go to my actions here, hit my reboot. Do take note of the other options here. Reboot's the one we want though. And then just confirm that. And then what will happen is that if I hit a refresh here, what you'll find is eventually it will no longer be operating. And in fact, you won't be able to see the page. And you can see the page is no longer loading because it is in a reboot state. So just give it a few minutes. When we come back, we'll take a look at that. Okay, I've been refreshing the browser for a while. You see we're getting pretty close. We're getting some responsiveness back, but not quite there yet. Okay, and there you have it. About 5-10 minutes later, we have a full reboot. We're ready to move on to task 2. All right, thanks for joining me for task 1. We'll see you in task 2. We'll take a look at the results of this action.